All right, Shalom. I want to give all the praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham Rakak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who taught me this truth. And Shalom to the hopeful elect. I'm back with another quick lesson through the Holy Spirit of the Rakak Wadash. Revelation 13, verses 15 and 16. A future system of control in which we are already here. Okay? And remember, the true prophets of Yahweh Shem Shai warned you first. Okay? And this is a heavy sign here that one of the brothers made. All right? It could be a camp sign, actually. Okay? It goes into the image of the beast giving life. Right? It says an artificial intelligence system empowered by its creator. Speaks through media, government, and global institutions. Demands worship, ultimate loyalty, and forces conformity. Right? He causes all through legislation, technology, economic control, okay? The mark on hand or forehead, a mark of ownership, allegiance, and authorization to participate in society and the economy, all right? You were warned, okay? It's a heavy sign, man. Legislation that enforces compliance, no mark, no access. Those who refuse the mark are excluded from all systems. Right? No banking, no medical care, no travel, no employment, no buying and selling. All right? See, that's heavy, man. But let's get into it here, right? Just adding on to it. Okay, and I want to get into this video here. Came out 2 weeks ago. It says AI billionaires want to control every aspect of your life. Okay? Remember, they're playing the role of a god. Okay, and before we get into that, let's just set it up with this. All right, this is from Collapse News. Okay, it says the soul versus the machine. A preview of the AI ruled future where humans are obsolete. Right? Let's go ahead and break this down. Okay. Hey, we're making this thing plain. All right. And the true prophets, all right, the men of great millstone. Okay. We broke this down. We've given you the warning time after time, man. Okay? So let's get into it here, see what we get. All right, this thing is at the doorstep, man. And we're not going to stop talking about it. All right? Let's let this pull up. Okay. So the summary here on the left, it goes into the existential threat of AI. It says replacement of humanity. All right, remember that devil Yuval Noah Harari? He said that. He said humans are replaceable. All right, he was bragging about it on the panel, how they no longer need humans. Right? So here we go. You know, you got AI replacing jobs and all of that. Replacement of humanity. AI poses an unprecedented threat to human freedom and dignity, aiming to replace human thought, creativity, and spiritual essence, rather than merely augmenting labor, right? Erasing autonomy. The ultimate result of this technological shift, if left unchecked, is the absolence, how you say that word, absolence of biological human life and individual sovereignty, all right? They're going to take all of that away. We're going to go more into that in this video here, right? You know? It says the globalist agenda, dystopian vision, elites such as Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab, Yuval Noah Harari are accused of pushing a post-human future where a centralized AI governs society, right? Where centralized AI governs society and dismantles sacred institutions like family and faith, right? And they're already doing that now. Okay? Pretext for control. This text claims that the C-19 pandemic was a psyop to test medical tyranny and surveillance, which it was, while climate sustainability is used as an excuse for AI-driven resource rationing, right? It says tools of enslavement. The agenda is supposedly enforced through transhumanism, digital IDs, central bank digital currencies, and AI-controlled social credit systems. Spiritual suppression. This tech alleges that elites are trying to disconnect humanity from its divine foundation using electromagnetic EMF pollution, toxic vaccines, and psychological warfare, right? And we'll finish it out. Let's go down here a little bit more because all this information is crucial, man. It says the soul and resistance, how you say it? The unreplicable soul, the human capacity for love, moral reasoning, and divine connection cannot be digitized or replicated by silicon and coal. And this is what they're trying to do, right? Growing defiance, decentralized communities, off-grid homesteaders, and truth seekers are actively rejecting the AI New World Order, right? Yeah, and that's the point, man. So who else is speaking up against this, you know? Let me get that in Psalms 94, right? Who's breaking this down? Who's thoroughly breaking this down, man? All right? And warning you about this, right? Who's standing up, right? Psalms 94:16. And it reads, who will rise up for me against the evildoers, or who will stand up for me against the workers of iniquity? NLT. Who will protect me from the wicked? Who will stand up for me against the evildoers, right? And that's the prophets of Yahweh Shem Yahushai. Okay? And as this devil continues to get revealed, we're letting them know that this system, this left-handed pseudo-kingdom that they're trying to push is not going to stand. Okay? The Lord's going to tear it down, right? Obadiah 1:21, it says, and saviors, which are the prophets, the judges, and saviors shall come up on Mount Zion to judge the mount of Esau. Okay, the government, the system of Esau, man, is being judged by the prophets, right? It says to judge the mount of Esau, and the kingdom should be the Lord's, Yahweh Shem Yahushai. See? So again, AI billionaires want to control every aspect of your life.
These billionaires have their bunkers. I was just in New Zealand, and that's the place where they've all decided to build their bunkers. And I actually learned for the first time why they all chose New Zealand. It's because there was an analysis of where, if nuclear bombs detonate, like the probability of where they would detonate. When you look at the map of the blast radius, New Zealand is almost always outside of that blast radius, so that's why they're building their bunkers there. You know, like, they will be fine. However the world ends, they're going to exist outside of that. They're like this.
Yeah, so the elites have it all mapped out. Okay, like she said, they have a map of the blast radius. Okay, this is New Zealand right here on the map. Okay, so they're already prepared. Okay, and it's prophecy because, you know, the elites are going to survive the nuclear destruction. Okay, just to be the first fruits of slavery when the elect come back down out of the heavens, you know, with those new bodies. All right, and how's it say in Jeremiah 16, how the fishers are going to turn to hunters. Okay, because the elect are going to hunt down, you know, these surviving Edomites, you know. Jeremiah 16 and 16, and it reads, it says, behold, I will send for many fishers, saith the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahushai, and they shall fish them. And after I will send for many hunters, and they shall hunt them down, and they shall hunt them from every mountain and from every hill and out of the holes of the rocks. You see that? So these elites, they're already prepared. Okay, they got the blast radius mapped out. They're in these different parts of the world in those bunkers. Okay, those retreats, those hiding places, you know. Verse 17, it says, for my eyes are upon all their ways. They are not hid from my face, neither is their iniquity hid from my eyes. All right, so you're not going to get away. Okay, this is Amos 9:1. Again, the Most High's judgment unavoidable. Okay, and this is really dealing with Jake. All right, but we can apply this to Esau as well. This is Amos 9:1. It says, I, the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahushai, standing upon the altar, and he said, smite the lintel of the door, that the post may shake, and cut them in the head, all of them. And I will slay the last of them with the sword. He that fleeth of them shall not flee away. and he that escapeth of them shall not be delivered. You see? Verse 2, though they dig into hell, all right, which is simply in the ground, under the earth, right? And though they dig into hell, thence shall my hand take them. Though they climb up to heaven, thence will I bring them down, right? You know, they got, retreats in the heavens, the ISS, these different getaways or whatnot, Verse 3, and though they hide themselves in the top of a Carmel, right? And that's a mountaintop, because they have bunkers in the mountains too, right? It says, and though they hide themselves in the top of Carmel, I will search and take them out thence. And though they be hid from my sight in the bottom of the sea, right? They got retreats under the ocean. Thence will I command the serpent, and he shall bite them, right? The Lord has different types of leviathans down there to get them damn devils under the ocean too. Okay, so they're not going to escape. Revelation 6 and 12, it says, and I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell into the earth, all right, going into the nuclear missiles, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. It's just showing you the devastation of that nuclear destruction, right? That's going to come from the missiles. Verse 15, the point. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, right? These elites, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman and every freeman hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Right. So they have these retreats in the mountains, in the bunkers under the earth, right, to flee from the judgment of Yahweh Shemel Shai. Okay, so like she was saying again, they already have the blast radius mapped out. They know where to go. All right, this is why they've been constructing these different retreats in these specific parts of the earth. All right, to avoid the nuclear fallout. Okay, let's go back here.
These billionaires have their bunkers. I was just in New Zealand, and that's the place where they've all decided to build their bunkers. And I actually learned for the first time why they all chose New Zealand. It's because there was an analysis of where if nuclear bombs detonate, like the probability of where they would detonate. When you look at the map of the blast radius, New Zealand is almost always outside of that blast radius, so that's why they're building their bunkers there. They will be fine. However the world ends, they're going to exist outside of that. They're like, this is inevitable. There's nothing you can do about it. And so all that's left for us to do is to make sure that we are part of the winners, not the losers.
At some point this year, Elon Musk will become the world's first trillionaire. That's right, he'll be worth more than $1 trillion US. It's a benchmark nobody's got to before. Remember, the first company wasn't worth $1 trillion until 2018. That was Apple, by the way. How is he getting so rich so quickly? A big part of it is, of course, SpaceX. It'll be floated on the stock market this year, and part of that flotation is XAI. So we are now entering a world not just of $1 trillion companies, but $1 trillion individuals, and that goes hand in hand with an industry, artificial intelligence, which is remaking commerce, politics, and society more generally. Its implications are huge, and our concerns collectively about it are growing by the month. But here's the thing, the more worried we get, the more we use it. And there's obviously some hypocrisy going on there. But that's the world, isn't it? It's always replete with contradictions. The point is, politically, how do you manage a technology this powerful, this disruptive, this prone to changing the status quo? Or, on the other hand, is that all just marketing rubbish? Have I fallen for the ads and the PR from the...
Yeah, so everything he's saying, as we showed you in the beginning, right? Let's go back to it. Okay? This is where it's all headed. Okay? Whether you can see it or not, whether you believe it or not. All right? It's in your face. A future system of control.
likes of OpenAI, Elon Musk, and Meta? Those are really important questions, and they were first touched upon by today's guest, Karen Howe, in the hardback version of this book, Empire of AI. We talked a year ago, superb conversation, did really well, not least because it's a really important topic. I'm very happy to have Karen back today because in the last 12 months, the empire of AI, its borders and its generals have changed to a pretty substantial degree. Karen Howe, welcome back to Downstream.
Thank you so much.
So excited to have you back on.
I'm also excited to be back on.
Before we started, I'm gonna put smoke up the backside of Novara Media. Before we started, you were kind enough to say, I'm just really excited to talk to you, talk about your book. The first conversation was so illuminating for me personally. And you said, I don't do second interviews.
I really try to avoid it because I've had a really crazy schedule, but I just loved my Novara Media interview. It was my favorite one of the entire tour, so I'm coming back.
Oh, that is so nice to hear. It did so well. And it's got millions of views. And I think it's because you struck the right chord at the right time. And I suppose that's the story of the book more generally, isn't it? You've catalysed the conversation, but I mean, it wouldn't blow up in the way that it did if it had just catalysed the conversation. You've also fed into real concerns and anxieties that are globally held at this point.
Yeah. I didn't realize. I think when we had our first interview, and I was just beginning the journey of going on book tour, I didn't really know how the book would land yet, even then, and I didn't really understand how rapidly the global conversation around AI would change. I mean, it's literally been just a year between our last interview and today, and
I'm gonna jump up a little bit. It's about an hour long. We're not gonna watch the whole video. I just wanna get to the point here. And you can watch the rest on your own. Let's jump up here to all bosses know there. Let's see what we get right here.
How have people in the industry responded? Are there some people leaning into that? Like every time I hear about Peter Thiel, for instance, it does kind of feel like he's saying, yeah, that's what I want to do, no shit. Or are they trying to dress it up in different ways, new ways, to how you found it, when you were writing this book before it came out in hardback?
Naomi Klein has this really amazing critique of what's happening right now in Silicon Valley, which she describes as end times fascism, and she connects it with all of these other different phenomena that are happening, not just within Silicon Valley, but I think it really encapsulates exactly how some people within the Silicon Valley establishment think about what is happening. I've actually heard people in the upper echelons of Silicon Valley acknowledge that AI, as it's currently conceived, will exacerbate inequality. And what's so fascinating is when I listen to them talk, I'm like, wait a minute, that's my analysis. Like, we agree with each other on the first part of our analysis of what AI is currently doing to society and what it could continue to do if we continue on this trajectory. And the difference between me and them is the next step of what we do with that. For me, I'm like, so let's stop doing that. Let's stop building AI in a way that exacerbates that inequality. And for them, they're like, this is inevitable. There's nothing you can do about it. And so all that's left for us to do is to make sure that we are part of the winners, not the losers. And that's what Naomi Klein describes with this kind of end times fascism ideology. It's this idea that the world as we know it right now is ending. there's no point in trying to say, climate change is coming. The religious end timers are also saying like the end is nigh, and civilization as we know it, for the AI boomers and doomers, they're also saying this is going to be cataclysmic. The shift is on the horizon.
Yeah, it's the spirit. The spirit of the end times is in the air. All right, and that goes back to the prophecy of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, man. That's the vibration. Okay, prophecy is rocking, man. 1 Peter 4 and 7, right? This is 1 Peter 4 and 7. It says, but the end of all things is at hand, right? We at the end of all things, the end of the world. But the end of all things is at hand. Be ye therefore sober and watch unto prayer, all right? NLT, the end of the world is coming soon, right? The end of the world is coming soon. Therefore, be earnest and disciplined in your prayers, man. So that's the spirit of prophecy, man. Okay, the end of the world, the end times, right? The day of doom. Let me get that too. All right, the day of doom. It's in the Apocrypha. The day of doom. I don't know why the hell my M button is not working. Hold on, man. Let me find that scripture. Right, bear with me. All right, here we go. 2nd Ezra 7, right? 2nd Ezra 7 and 43. Okay. Yeah, 2nd Ezra 7 and 43. And it reads, it says, but the day of doom shall be the end of this time. Okay? But the day of doom shall be the end of this time, and the beginning of immortality for to come, wherein corruption is past. All right, so we're approaching that time. That's what's being acknowledged in the earth, right?
And they don't have any desire to save what we have currently. They're just worried about getting to the next place and making sure that they are okay. And so, yeah, I mean, they when they see critiques like this, some of them are like, oh yeah, that sounds about right. That is, the analysis of what is happening currently. What they disagree with is what we do about it.
Here in Navarra Media, we have 1.2 million YouTube subscribers, millions of people across social media, hundreds of thousands of you watch these downstreams every week. And they also lost, I think, 2 billion animals a few years ago. So it's this strange, as I say, learned helplessness, which seems to define the ruling class of our age, which is so strange because on the one hand, they had this Promethean rhetoric about master of the universe, we're going to change everything. But fundamentally, actually, they think we can't really change anything and we're victims of circumstance. All of us are victims of circumstance. What do you think explains that strange juxtaposition?
I think that they have to tell themselves this story in order to be okay with not taking the burden of responsibility to actually make the world better.
But it's all manufactured, man. Everything that's going on the earth, all right, they're behind it, all right. They're pushing the destruction and the corruption and the tainting of the earth and destroying the environment and the air and the ecosystems, man. Okay, this man is the devil, okay, that the Bible speaks of, right? And the main goal is what? They're trying to play God, all right, which we're getting into here, right? And I'm just thinking out loud as I just go through this video, right? But Ezekiel, let's get that in 28, All right, this is Ezekiel 28 and 1. And it reads, the word of the Lord, Yahweh Shemel Shai, came again unto me, saying, Son of man, say unto the prince of Tyrus, right? So this is symbolically dealing with Esau, all right? Babylon, America, okay? Spiritual Tyrus, right? It says, say unto the prince of Tyrus, thus saith the Lord power, because thy heart is lifted up, and thou hast said, I am a God. I sit in the seat of God in the midst of the seas, yet thou art a man, and not God, though thou set thy heart as the heart of God. And this is what they're doing through the technology, man. How they're corrupting the earth, how they plan on merging man with machine, rewriting humans in their own image. All right? They're fulfilling this prophecy of playing the role of a God. You know? Verse 3, behold, thou art wiser than Daniel. There is no secret that they can hide for thee. Right? With thy wisdom and with thy understanding, thou hast gotten thee riches, and has gotten silver and has gotten gold and silver into thy treasures. Right? Going into his technological advancement. Okay? This this AI that you see that's going on right now. All right, his ability to to augment human beings and splice genes, make designer babies. He has this nanotech that can infiltrate your body and control your mind and your spirit. Everything. This nuclear technology, his ability to create diseases, control the weather, all these different things, man. Which he's gotten rich from. By that great wisdom, right? Which really this left-hand knowledge. By thy great wisdom and by thy traffic, thou hast increased thy riches. Thy heart is lifted up because of thy riches. He's proud. Okay, these devils, these elites, these technocrats are extremely proud. Therefore, thus saith the Lord of power, Yahweh Shemel Shai, because thou hast set thy heart as the heart of a God. Behold, therefore, I will bring strangers upon thee, the terrible of the nations, and they shall draw their swords against the beauty of thy wisdom, and shall defile thy brightness. And this is why we're at the point of nuclear war, man. As I talk about all the time, as we're at the peak of this technology, we're also at the peak of nuclear destruction. So as all this is going on, these nations are preparing for nuclear war, right? Which is going to throw this man's system down,
If they don't acknowledge their own agency in creating these problems, and therefore the burden of responsibility to fix these problems, and they instead situate themselves in the broad sweep of history, marching forward without them and without all of us apparently participating in it, then they get away with it. They can get away, and it is not only useful in washing them of that responsibility, but it's also, they can hold that position because they're the ones that will be okay if nothing is done about it, right? These billionaires have their bunkers. I was just in New Zealand, and that's the place where they've all decided to build their bunkers. And I actually learned for the first time why they all chose New Zealand. It's because there was an analysis of where if nuclear bombs detonate, like the probability of where they would detonate. When you look at the map of the blast radius, New Zealand is almost always outside of that blast radius, so that's why they're building their bunkers there. Like that, they will be fine. However the world ends, they're going to exist outside of that, and that's why they can exist in this space where they neither have any kind of moral responsibility for actually ushering in a better world, and nor do they have any ramifications for not taking on that responsibility.
There's Neil Postman who talks about technopoly. I think we mentioned this the last time we had a conversation, which is to say, he writes a great book called Technopoly. He says we move in 3 stages from tool-using societies to technocracies to technopoly, where increasingly people default to the needs of technology. People serve technology rather than the other way around in technopolis. That's his view. And I subscribe to that. I think it's true. But I think what your point there a moment ago is that the fatalism is politically convenient because of the material interests of these people. So these aren't ideological presumptions they have, which are an outgrowth of the age. This is the spirit of the age, which is kind of what Neil Postman says. Maybe that is also true, but I think you're right. They subscribe to the fatalism precisely because it allows you to create the world's first trillionaires, which is what Elon Musk is going to become in the next couple of months with the IPO, the flotation of SpaceX, which also includes an AI company, XAI.
Yes.
That is a new development. I don't think we had the first $1 trillion company until 2018. We're now going to have a trillionaire.
Yeah.
You've had lots of conversations in the last 12 months with people at the level of activists and journalists, but also, I presume, amongst the elite. Do they not find this stuff kind of weird? Like, when we're now going to have trillionaires? Is that not kind of a bit like...
If you mean elite broadly defined as not just the tech elite, but just other elites like business elites
Sure,
or
exactly.
political elites around the world, absolutely.
The elites of Esau, Edom. Okay?
They find it weird. I think part of it is because they're envious.
Yeah.
Because they're not the ones that are being minted as trillionaires. But yeah, they are just baffled by the degree to which inequality has been allowed to continue to corrode society. And I think, I was in this conversation with a group of business elites from Europe and Asia, and they were very, very cognizant of the fact that inequality is one of the most corrosive forces that destabilizes the environments in which they can ultimately do business, but also just corrodes democratic society in general and a healthy, functioning society. And I was really struck by how much, once again, there was this learned helplessness. Like, they recognized the analysis, they recognized this problem, but they felt that still there were people more powerful than them, aka the US government, these US Silicon Valley business executives that somehow have more power. Therefore, they just must operate in the system that was designed and constructed for them. It's just bizarre. And then
Yeah, because they're the gods. All right, this is the system that we keep talking about, that they're eventually about to usher in, where they're gonna have that full control over everybody. All right, ownership, surveillance, control how you live, what you can do, everything, man. All right, let's play a little bit more. We're not gonna watch this whole thing, but I wanted to just grab a couple of points from the video, right?
And then I talk with the activists that literally have nothing. That I was driving around in New Mexico with an activist who, her car has, a damaged windshield and it looks like it's 20 years old because she just can't afford to get a new one. And she was talking about how she's purposely put her kids in a public school that she knows they're getting a shitty education from, in part because it's really important for her to continue being committed to the improvement of public institutions. And those are the types of people that have the most agency in the world and are like, we can change things, even though they exist in this power structure at the bottom. And so it's just been, as I've traveled through these circles up and down the power ladder, it's just been so remarkable to me how people craft stories around themselves to protect themselves.
Yeah, so I just want to see if there's anything else. All right. And we'll wrap this up. Yeah, so I mean, the point is there. Okay, we ain't got to watch the whole thing, but just showing you where the future is headed, where society is going. All right, there's no way around it, man. All right, we've done plenty of lessons going into this topic, how these billionaire tech elites want full control over humanity, and here it comes. All right, the system's here, man. Shalom.